Hey friends, we're going to pick it up in chapter 2 here with some intro to conditional statements and loops. We'll get more into them in the next couple chapters, but we want to start them off here in chapter 2 so you can get some ideas for cool things that you can do with your programs. So we're able to calculate my total cost for my coffees here, and actually I want to save that as a separate variable. So I'm going to say my total cost for coffee is equal to that result. That way I can use this later, or we can assign it to value here. And then I can use that here in my expression, or my print if I want here. So we'll then add that in to the print. Oh, that's where my plus sign went. There we go. And it'll print it out for us. But now I want to be able to see, like, do I have enough money for that? So let's ask them. We'll say, hey, how much money do you have? And then we'll ask them to enter that in. So we'll have a double for money in pocket is double.parse double of the keyboard next line, right? I'm just going to go copy paste that here. Don't need to type it again because I've already typed it once. So they'll enter how much they have. Now we can check and see, hey, do you have enough money? So the syntax for that, or how we write that in Java, is we say if, and we give it a set of parentheses. What this means here then is if whatever's inside of here is true, then we have a set of curly braces. Now, IntelliJ is going to be helpful for us. So when I start my curly brace, it gives me the ending curly brace here. So I started the curly brace. It doesn't yet, but as soon as I hit enter, it will give me the next one. So you don't have to type them in yourself, and sometimes it gives you more than one. But what you can do is, as I hover down here, like at this one, and it says, hey, it matches with the one up on line 6, public static void main string args. So you need to see we always have matching opening and closing curly braces. Now, some people like the curly brace to be at the end of the line. Some people like it to be on the line after. I used to be in this school of thought, but all the automatic formatting and things like that will put it on the same line, and I said, sure, that's fine. I don't want to fight the tool. So we'll say if. So if here, then we can use relational operators. We can say, hey, is it equal to? Is it not equal to? Is it greater than? Is it less than? Like different ways of comparing. So I can say, hey, if my money in my pocket is greater than or equal to the total cost for coffee, then I'll say it'll cost you this much. Right, so this is an if statement, so only runs if this is true. So if the expression inside the parentheses is true, the if block runs, right? So we'll say this is a block of code, right? Everything inside the parentheses from to here. Now, technically, you don't need parentheses if you only have a single line after, but I'm going to tell you to just always use the curly braces. I'm sorry, not parentheses, curly braces. Just always use the curly braces. It's a good habit to get into, and not using them will cause all sorts of problems. Now, I'm sure most of you folks don't remember this at all, but back when I was in school, there was a big issue with the Safari web browser, and it had a vulnerability which meant someone could hijack your SSL sessions, essentially, and make them not secure, which is a big deal, right? If you can't securely browse the internet, that's no good. So the root cause of that is one of the fine developers over at Apple did not use curly braces around a statement, and they thought both lines of code would run, not just one. Oops, that was a bad thing. So they could essentially break it with a finely crafted something or other. So we're just always going to use the curly braces here. Now, if this is not true, we can have an else case. We say else and then a set of curly braces here. This means if the if expression is false, right, or not true, right? False is the same as not true is false, right? That sort of thing. Here we'll say you don't have enough money for that. Okay, so now when I run my program, here we're going to figure out how much it is here. So we'll say my name is Eric. We'll say I want 6 coffees for $1.99. If I only have $10 in my pocket, we don't have enough money for that, right? Not happening. But if I run it again here, and then I'll say, okay, my name is Eric. I want 6 coffees. They're $1.99. I have $20 in my pocket. It says, okay, sure, it'll cost you $11.94. You have 20. That is greater than or equal to the cost. So this block of code runs. If it's not true, right, then the else block runs. So just a quick little intro to using these blocks of code here, which are super cool. A really fun way of doing that here. And then the next thing we're going to look at, again, we'll come back to these later, so don't worry too much about it here. But we want to look at how we can compare strings now in these if blocks. So how about we say, what did you want to order? We said it was, what do we have, a coffee. This is our menu up here, right? We'll give them the coffee menu. and then we'll get their order. So then we'll have a string for the order is keyboard.nextLine. So if I'm asking for string input, I need to check, hey, what did they enter? So we can say, hey, if order, now I can't say equals coffee. You can't use an equal sign here with strings because Java sucks. At least it sucks at this. Can't use with strings. It doesn't work for lots of various reasons here. Don't worry too much about why it doesn't work, but just you can't do it here. Okay, so what we need to do instead, we'll say order dot equals, and then usually I like this ignoring case because I don't know if the user typed with all caps on or not. So I'm going to say, hey, if order equals ignoring case, quote, coffee. Now this is nice because it's going to ignore the case for me, right? I don't need to do anything with coffee to make it all lowercase, to compare it just to lowercase, or say if it's lowercase or uppercase, or yada, yada, yada. It will compare it for me. It doesn't matter if the user has caps lock on or not. If they entered coffee, then we'll say that's $1. That's $1 for coffee, right? Then we can say, okay, if it wasn't that, how about else if it was espresso? And that's $1.50 for espresso. So you can have an if and then an else if. And say, okay, if it's not that one, is it this one? And then another else if. We can say, okay, if it's not that one, is it latte? I mean, I'm just going to do it all lowercase to make things a little easier for me. $2 for latte. And then I'm going to have an else here. So if it's not this, it's not this, and it's not this, my else case is I don't sell that. Right? So now I can ask them and say, hey, tell me what you want to order. Is it coffee, espresso, or latte? And then, so we got to do name. We'll do 6 coffees and $1 of coffee. I got $10 in my pocket. Great. All right, what do we want to order? Let's do coffee. We'll say, okay, that's $1 for coffee. Right? This block here ran. Now, what's cool with if, else, whatever, this chain of these, they will be mutually exclusive, meaning one and only one will run. Right? So once the first one runs, none of the other ones will run because the else block doesn't run. Right? Once there's an if block, none of the other else blocks run. So we can do stuff like that to compare strings in sort of a chain of expressions here, which is really nice. And then the last thing we're going to look at is a loop here, which is pretty handy. So we can say, hey, let's have a double for total here. We're going to start total off at 0. And then I'm going to say, how about we have a string for, let's say, more entries. And we're going to entries equals y. Now, a loop then is going to do something as long as something's true. So we say while more entries equals ignoring case y. So as long as this is true, like if this is true, it runs once. So this is, we'll check if it's true and run if it is. Right? What'll happen then is inside the loop, all of this code will run. When it gets down to the end of the loop here, after the loop ends, or gets to the end, it goes back to the while expression, and if it's true, runs again. Runs again. So if it's true, it'll run again here. So then I can ask them, I can say, hey, enter a receipt, and then we'll get a double for the value is double.parseDouble of the keyboard.nextLine. Okay, and then I'll take my total plus equals the value, and I'll ask them, do you have more? Do you have more receipts? Receipts. And then I'm going to tell them, like, right in this question here, like, please enter a Y or an N or something, like, just to hopefully get a helpful answer here. Why can't I spell receipts? What? All right, help me out here. Help me out. Receipts. There we go. Oh, yeah. Sure. E before I when it comes after C. That's not how you say it. That's terrible here. And I'm going to change the value of more entries. So I'll say more entries equals keyboard.nextLine. Okay, so you give me an answer here. If it's a Y, my loop will run again. If it's anything other than a Y, this will be false and the loop will not run. Right? If this expression is false, the whole thing, this doesn't run, and then we're over. And then when we're done with this, we can print out a total. Total receipts is, you know, a $sign or something here plus the total. So if I don't know how many I have, I just have a stack of receipts here. I need to like cash out my register at the end of my shift here. I'm just going to go through all the receipts, enter values, enter values, enter values, enter values. 1, 1, and 1, sure. And then a coffee. Actually, let's just do 1 again. It says I don't sell that. All right, now enter a receipt. We'll say 1, more receipts, yes. 2, more receipts, yes. 3, more receipts, yes. 4, More receipts? No, we're all done. $10 receipts, right? 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 10. We totaled it up successfully. So we can use this loop expression here. And again, we'll get more into loops later. Don't worry too much about it. They just want to kind of introduce these so that you can see you can do cooler things with it. And then Murak will go through his whole invoice application that you can do and figure out an invoice for somebody and for test scores. So a couple fun things you can work through here, and we'll figure it out, okay? Now the other thing that might happen here, you might run into error. So if you ask the user to enter a value and you are trying to turn it into an integer or a double here, bad stuff can happen. So name is easy, but like how many coffees do you want to buy? If I write 10, it crashes. It says exception thread main Java lang number format exception for input string quote 10. Now what this is here is called the stack trace. So this is the exception that happened. You kind of read these backwards. So all of this stuff is not our code. Integer.java is not our code. We can see it started with chapter2.chapter2.main at line 120. And what's cool, if I click this 120, it actually takes me to my line 120, and this is where it crashed. I tried to convert this next line into an integer, and you typed in 10 as TEN. Well, Java's not that smart. It's going to puke on it here. So we're going to get that error, and it's just not going to work very well for us. So if you run into errors and they don't make a lot of sense, let me know. You can shoot me the message. It's great if your code is on GitHub, right? If you've committed your code to GitHub, like you're going to do for Lab 2, you can actually send me the URL of that code here. So I'll commit mine. I'll say here's some if and while. So those are conditionals and loops. I'll push that. So if I go look at my code on GitHub, you on GitHub again? Oops, I think I've got it. It opened in my other window here. Grab this tab here. There we go. Nope, come on. Dock with the other tabs. There we go. And I look at chapter 2, and we can come in here and say, hey, you know, Eric, I'm having trouble. I'm getting an error here at line 50 or something. And you can grab that URL and send it to me. Then you've got line 50. Right, which is really nice. You don't have to email me code. You don't have to take screenshots. You know, that's all well and good too, but this is pretty nice and easy and handy. And we're going to be working on keeping our code in Git, or in GitHub, right? Our cloud service provider here for Git, which is fantastic. All right, so that wraps up chapter 2. We'll talk about the lab and the project in the next couple of videos. Thanks, folks.